next speaker is Gordon McKay. Gordon is a leading member of Unison Scotland Health, and he's another member of the Unison NEC. He's actually a rare thing. And many of you who are local will know John Rogers from the local campaigns down here, and as many of you who are in Unison, you'll know John Rogers as an activist in Lambeth Unison and as a member of Unison NEC himself, and also as the author of the infamous John's Union blog, I think is what it's called. Anyway, Gordon, I have to say, is that rare thing. Gordon is a member of the Unison NEC that John Rogers speaks very highly of. So we're very much looking forward to what Gordon's got to say. Gordon McKay.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. If people don't mind, I'm actually the Stacey that I'm actually getting to under the NHS just out my back, so apologies for sitting down. First of all, can I say thanks very much for the invitation, Claire, and I'm tempted to say thanks very much for those warm words from John Rogers as well. I don't know who's more worried about John, I say you or me. The reason I was particularly pleased about being invited tonight because it actually made me start doing some research and getting some background on the English NHS. You probably guess from the accent I'm not local, and you'll probably have heard that the NHS is pretty different in Scotland, I say, to what I knew it was in England, but I say with even more background reading, I've just realised just how different it is. Scotland, for example, there is no terms, there's no purchaser provider split in the NHS. There are no foundation hospitals. We did have a few PFI hospitals, but they are rapidly getting taken back in-house. They're getting taken back into full public ownership. And we actually had one hospital a few years ago. It was a private hospital that we nationalised. And at the same time as nationalising that, it was Healthcare International that owned it. They attached to the hospital, they had a hotel, and we nationalised the hotel as well. And so we now have the only publicly owned hotel in the United Kingdom. And that might not seem that great, but one of the good things about taking that hotel into public ownership was that we recently negotiated a living wage for all NHS staff in Scotland. So NHS staff down in the living wage, and particularly because the current Health Secretary in Scotland clearly has a referendum coming up in September, we just made sure that we knew if you want to get formal accreditation of being a living wage employer, you'll have to pay the hotel staff in the Beardsmore Hotel the living wage. So we got hotel staff who are very, very often on minimum wage. They're now in the living wage as well. Other things we negotiated in Scotland is for 12 years now, we have a no compulsory redundancy agreement in Scotland. All jobs are safe in the NHS in Scotland. We've also got an organisational change protection agreement, which means if through restructuring we agree to any changes in jobs and anybody is down banded, they get protection on their own band, and that's for life in Scotland. And that doesn't just include their pay, their salary, it includes any unsocial hours that they get, it includes their pension. So I think a lot of people in England say, I actually don't believe us at times when we hear about the agreements that we've arranged. The other thing is, to be absolutely blunt, you cannot win a Scottish parliamentary election unless you are fully committed to the NHS in Scotland. Coming up to the referendum, both the yes and the no campaigns, but in reality the Labour Party and the SNP absolutely commitment to no privatisation of the NHS in Scotland. We also, of course, have no prescription charges in Scotland. We have free personal care for the elderly at home. So that's how we choose to spend our money in Scotland. Some might say it's under the Barnett formula, that's how we choose to spend your money in Scotland. But I think we spend it in the way that people like yourself would like. But what we'll do for the next few minutes is just talk about what I've been reading about in the NHS in England. With the Health and Social Care Act, and as far as I can see, it was just simply about turning the NHS in England into a commercial market. And what was going to happen was the government would just simply become a payer for services like Medicare in America. In the last 30 years, we've seen various Tory governments just simply, in the words of Howard Mullen, just sell off the family silver. We sold off British Gas, British Telecom, the railways, all the public services. The one big jewel in the crown now for the private sector is the NHS. They are desperate to get their hands on the NHS because they see billions of pounds there, as I say, that they can get their hands on to make a profit on. So, you'll have saw probably yesterday the report for the King's Fund that said, come next May, there will be a decision time for the NHS. Either there'll have to be significant funding increases, or there's going to be significant cuts to the NHS services. Now, it appears from the outsider that you've actually been suffering quite severe cuts in the last few years already. But I think in that report almost made the LRC look a bit like Nostradamus and say actually having a meeting tonight entitled 55 Weeks to Save the NHS. And I think what was good as well about the title was it wasn't a question mark after 55 weeks to save the NHS. It was an exclamation mark, because you can't save the NHS. After the funding issue, there's the cuts in services. We have seen massive cuts in the NHS in England. And again, as I said earlier, it is just simply that we are almost unable to comprehend in Scotland. 12,000 redundancies in the NHS. 12,000 compulsory redundancies in the NHS since the Tories came to power. On top of that, 5,000 jobs away just through what would normally be called attrition rates. Just people leaving the service and moving on. And again, probably on top of that, you've got another 8,000 or 9,000 jobs at any one time that just don't get filled, whether it's for weeks or months or sometimes years. The staffing complement gets kept. Unison survey at the turn of the year, 2/3 of staff said their department had experienced staffing cuts in the last 12 months. 20,000 fewer nurses now that are actually required to run the service. The number of student nurses reduced 18% from when Labour left office in 2010. And on top of that, we have the savage funding cuts in England. I saw a report recently, I think it's 16 trusts in England now predicting at least an £11 million deficit at the end of the financial year, just in April there. And I think Bart's Hospital was at the top of that list, £50 million in deficit. Department of Health plans to rip out £20 billion out of the service by next year. 70% of finance directors say their hospitals will be in serious financial difficulties for 2016. Andy Burnham is accused of Tories having no plan to deal with financial difficulties, but I would suggest Andy Burnham's actually missing the point. There is no intention in the Tory party to have a plan to deal with the financial difficulties. The plan is to privatise the service. Another Tory government or a coalition of Lib Dems, I genuinely believe that will be the end of the NHS in England, as people of our generation knew it. The only alternative that I can foresee is a Labour government in 2015, but the Labour Party shouldn't imagine for a moment that that's certainly a given. Labour needs to get back to their core voters and give their core voters an actual reason for voting Labour again. I've been Labour Party since I was 15, but you need to go back out to people and give them a reason to vote Labour. The slogan that we've heard sometimes, vote Labour, not quite as bad as the Tories, just isn't good enough to actually enthuse people to go back out to the ballot box and to go out and chart doors and go out and do the leaflets and do the campaign and all the hard work. And neither Ed Ball's saying that his #1 priority is to reduce public expenditure in the lifetime the next Parliament. Labour need to make the NHS one of its core issues. Burnham needs to repeal the Health and Social Care Act. What he replaces it with is just important. He needs to put an end to competition in the NHS, and he needs to put an end to PFI. Above everything else, he needs to invest again in the NHS. 0.1% increase when inflation is at 2% and real NHS inflation is at 4% isn't going to cut it. You can pay for it through raising corporation tax, you can pay for it through a banker's bonus tax, again that Labour put in place, say they raised £3 billion say pre-election. You can start doing that every year, and you can put back on the additional rate of income tax, and it shouldn't just be at 50p over £150,000, it should be 55p over £100,000, and that's just the first step, and you can put on a management tax as well. The NHS in England is eminently saleable. The public have got the will, the trade unions have the will. We need to make sure the Labour Party have got the will as well. So thanks very much for inviting me.